So, first things talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, man. It's been a 3-4 defense for a long time, long time. And some of the best defenses, not the steel curtain defense. We got to leave them in a separate category, in my opinion. But some of the best defenses in the National Football League, not just Pittsburgh Steelers, have come from us over in the last, let's just call it 20 years, in our 3-4 defense and what we do out of it. Now, a lot of it is because we don't do some of the things that we did before. You go back to the Dick LeBeau era where we were zone blitzing all over the place, and we were bringing guys from every which way. You didn't know where the Steelers were going to blitz from. You didn't know who was going to rush from down to down. You just didn't know those kinds of things. Over the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, the Steelers have become, even longer than that, maybe the last decade, we've become kind of vanilla, in what our approach has been. So is it time to start thinking, okay, let's flip over to the 4-3 defense? Now, here's a couple of things that I want to talk about, especially when we talk about the new draft and some of the guys that we drafted. Look at like Jack Sawyer, for instance. He is a 4-3 defensive end. There's no doubt in my mind. You look at him and you look at his skill set and what he brings to the table. Jack Sawyer is a 4-3 defensive end. Stout against the run. We'll see how his pass rush skills, translate to the National Football League. I've been pretty skeptical on that. Either way, that's what he did in college. That's what his skill set is. So he's a 4-3 defensive end. You look at our man, Mr. Y.A. Black. He's a nose tackle, but he's not your typical 3-4 nose tackle, not in my opinion. Didn't do that in college. He was a nose tackle, also a 3 technique. He moved all over the line. I think the Steelers may want to play him at nose tackle. We've heard reports that that's not where they're looking to play him, which I think would be a colossal mistake. But either way, he's a 4-3 nose tackle, in my opinion. Then you look at Mr. Derek Harmon. Again, Derek Harmon, we talked about what he brings to the table, man, and he can play up and down the line. But if you just had to slot him in, you would probably slot him in as a 4-3 defensive tackle. Now, maybe he's going to get some looks when we go to nickel and stuff like that. Maybe he'll get some looks at nose tackle, especially with Cam Hayward. But if you just, hey, what's this guy? He's a 4-3 defensive tackle. Now, here's the thing. The Steelers' base defense, we've known for years, it's the 3-4, as I mentioned. But 25.6% of the time, which equated to 266 snaps. That's it. When you think the Steelers had almost 1,100 defensive snaps, 266 of them were in the base 3-4 defense. You think about that for a second. Now, one thing is definitely true. There were several times where the Steelers, as far as a defense, were in nickel and the teams come out in a running formation. You're like, what are we doing? And there's times out there where the Steelers either was bad communication, didn't get the calls from upstairs, downstairs when they're seeing personnel groups come on the field where the Steelers line up literally in nickel defense and offense has a running formation out there. So I don't know what the percentages you want to put on that, but it was more than 1 or 2 times in a football game where we saw that, which is disturbing to say the least. But if your base defense is a 3-4 and you can only be in it, 266 snaps, you're not in just less than 26%, then what are we doing? That's my question. Is like, why can't we transform? Most of the time, like I said, we're in the sub packages 70% of the time. Nickel, dime, and whether it's 3 safeties, 3 DBs, 4 DBs, whatever it is, 70% of the time we were in sub packages, which is crazy to think about. So let's take a look at it. So here's some of the issues as far as the Steelers on why we can't move to the 3-4. Number one, they don't have enough, or excuse me, not move to the 3-4, move to the 4-3. Why we can't move to it. We don't have enough linebackers. Like when you are a 4-3 defense, you have 3 linebackers on the field, okay? And I know that people are going to say, well, come on, Big B. We got four linebackers now. They're outside linebackers. I've told you guys once, I'll tell you in a million times. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, when we go to nickel, those guys are on the field. And those guys are rushing from the outside. So I count them as defensive linemen. Now, you may not want to count them as defensive linemen, but I'm sorry, TJ Watt's not going to line up in a 4-3 defense and be a Sam. Alex Highsmith is not going to line up in a 4-3 defense and be a will linebacker. So let's be realistic about this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that from time to time, yes, they can drop into coverage. But do you want TJ Watt dropping into coverage? Oh, I don't know. 50 to 60% of the time is what a Sam linebacker, if he's on the field, would do. Do you want him doing that? Or do you want him rushing the passer? So when I say we don't have enough linebackers, we don't have enough linebackers to do what traditional linebackers do. Let's just say that. So we don't have that. Okay. Now, granted, we've got some on the roster, but are those guys really going to make the football team? Are they going to make a big impact? You know, and I'm not saying you have to have, 8 middle linebackers. And when I say middle, Will, Sam, you don't have to have 8 guys, but you have to have guys that if somebody goes down, that they can step in and make a play. The Steelers don't have that. They would have to reconstruct how they do their roster. And it's too late for that this year. You can't do that. Okay. So they just don't have enough linebackers right now, and the one thing that they don't have is a thumper. All 4-3 defenses, they got a guy that is literally just a thumping. And we had it with Landon Roberts, but we got rid of him. Okay, we didn't sign him back. Well, you need a thumper, a guy that, if you run in the middle, you're going to have a hard time blocking this guy, or he's going to stop. He makes contact and running backs go backwards. That's what you need in a 4-3 defense. Steelers don't have that. They have guys that can make plays. Don't get me wrong. They can run around and make plays. They can make tackles. They can do that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't say that Patrick Queen or Peyton Wilson or Cole Holcomb are guys that you would consider thumpers. Tacklers, that's one thing. Thumpers, that's a totally different ballgame. Steelers don't possess any of those currently. And then it's a passing league. And so when I say it's a passing league, we were in our sub packages. Now, don't get me wrong, we were in sub packages a lot when teams were in running formations, but we were in sub packages for a reason. It's because teams throw the football nowadays more than they run the football. So you have to line up that way. Even if they come out in, 11 personnel where they got 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 back. Okay. But you have to match up with that. You have to these days in football. Otherwise, they're going to audible and they're going to pick you apart if you're trying to cover, slot receivers with linebackers out there. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. So that's why we go to those sub packages. Okay. Now, the key to that is teams they can also run the football. And that's what they did early in the season. They would get Peyton Wilson out there and they would run at him. And we'll talk about Peyton Wilson here a little bit later. But you have to be able to match up. I just don't think the Steelers roster right now is built to withstand or to be effective in the 4-3. I think it's something that you could do in an offseason. I don't think it would take, 4 years or anything like that, 3 or 4 years to be able to transform you into the 4-3. I don't think that, but if the Steelers wanted to do it and make a change, you could do it in an offseason. You absolutely could do it in an offseason. I just don't think this is the one because, again, the linebacking situation. We just don't have the linebackers that are conducive to what you would need. So let's go to the poll question, people. Good poll questions today, by the way. So, number 1, do you believe the Steelers' current linebacking core is capable of effectively transitioning to a 4-3 defense? A, yes, they have the skill sets to adapt and excel. B, no, we lack the depth and talent needed for a 4-3 defense. A or B? And remember to put the number behind the letter because we got 4 poll questions. So you put B, put B1, or A, A1, so we know exactly what question that you guys are answering. So not sure we got the linebacking core, but some of you out there may think. So who knows? Let's move on, people. Let's move on.